The knock came at 2:47 a.m., hard enough to rattle the hinges. Mara Lane's heart seized. She looked down at Islah's flushed face, her daughter's small body radiating heat even through the damp washcloth pressed to her forehead. The thermometer on the nightstand read 104.3. Another knock. Harder this time. Mara's phone buzzed on the mattress beside her. She glanced at the screen, confusion flooding through her exhaustion. The text she'd sent 20 minutes ago, the desperate plea for $300 to cover an emergency room visit, had gone to a number she didn't recognize. And now someone had responded. Open the door. Doctor is outside. Her hand shook as she stood. Through the peephole, she saw a woman in medical scrubs holding a leather bag, flanked by two men in dark suits. This wasn't right. This wasn't how anything worked. But Islah whimpered behind her, a sound that cut straight through Mara's chest. She opened the door. The doctor moved past her without introduction, setting her bag on the cluttered coffee table and pulling out a stethoscope. One of the suited men positioned himself by the window. The other stayed at the door. Wait, Mara said. Who sent you? I don't understand what's happening. The doctor looked up, her expression professionally neutral. Your daughter's fever. How long? 6 hours. Maybe 7. But I need to know. Ms. Lane. The voice came from the doorway. Deep, accented, commanding. Step in the hall with me, please. Mara turned. A third man stood in her doorway, different from the others. Older, perhaps 40, with silver threading through black hair. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and his eyes held a weight that made her want to step backward. My daughter is being examined by the best pediatric specialist in the city, he said. She'll be fine, but we need to talk. Now. Something in his tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Mara glanced back at Islah, at the doctor carefully checking her vitals, then followed the man into the hallway. He closed the apartment door behind them. My name is Jin Hwang, he said. You sent me a text message tonight. Do you know who I am? Mara's mind raced. The name meant nothing. No, I was trying to reach my ex-husband, Tate Reynolds, for emergency money. I must have. You must have accidentally contacted me instead. Jin's expression didn't change. Unfortunate timing, or perhaps fortunate, depending on perspective. Tate Reynolds owes my organization considerable money. $240,000, to be precise. He stole it 6 weeks ago. The hallway tilted. Mara grabbed the wall. What? Your ex-husband is a gambling addict and a thief. He took money that didn't belong to him. And now people are looking for ways to make him pay it back. People who don't discriminate between the debtor and his family. We're divorced, Mara said, her voice rising. I haven't seen him in 8 months. Islah is his daughter, but he has no custody rights, no visitation. We're not his family. That distinction won't matter to the men searching for him. Mara's legs felt weak. This couldn't be real. This was exhaustion talking, fever dreams while she worried about Islah. Any moment she'd wake up and none of this would have happened. Jin pulled out his phone, tapped the screen twice, and turned it toward her. The photo showed Tate, unmistakably Tate, with his crooked smile and the scar over his left eyebrow, standing outside a casino. The timestamp read 3 days ago. He's in the city, Jin said. And he's desperate. Desperate men make dangerous choices. They look for leverage, for bargaining chips. Islah, Mara whispered. Yes. The apartment door opened. The doctor emerged, her bag in hand. Viral infection. I've administered fever reducers and fluids. She'll need monitoring through the night, but the crisis has passed. I've left instructions and medication inside. Jin nodded, and the doctor walked past them toward the elevator. The two suited men followed, leaving Jin and Mara alone in the fluorescent-lit hallway. You have a decision to make, Jin said. You can stay here, in this apartment with inadequate locks and no security, hoping that Tate's enemies don't find you first. Or you can accept my protection. Why would you protect us? You don't know me. No, Jin agreed. But I know what it's like to be collateral damage in someone else's war. And I know that a sick child shouldn't suffer for her father's crimes. He paused. Also, it serves my interests. Tate will surface eventually. When he does, having you and your daughter safe removes variables from the equation. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle this herself, that she'd kept Isla safe for 6 years without help from anyone. But the temperature reading flashed her mind. 104.3. She'd been 20 minutes from the ER with $17 in her checking account and a max credit card. What does protection mean? She asked. My estate. Private security. Everything you and Isla need until this situation resolves. And then what? You just let us go. Something flickered in Jin's expression. Then we reassess. But Ms. Lane, you need to decide now. My men have been tracking chatter about Reynolds for weeks. There are 3 different groups looking for him. One of them will connect him to you eventually. Mara looked back at her apartment door, at the peeling paint and the loose doorknob she'd been meaning to fix for months, at the life she'd built through sheer stubbornness and pride. Okay, she said. Okay. The estate sat 40 minutes outside the city, behind walls that seemed designed to keep out armies. Mara watched them pass through 3 separate security checkpoints, each one more intimidating than the last. Isla slept in her arms, her fever finally broken, unaware that their entire world had just shifted sideways. The house itself looked like something from a magazine spread. All clean lines and expensive materials, the kind of place where Mara was afraid to touch anything. A woman in her 50s met them at the door, introducing herself as Mrs. Chun, the house manager. Your rooms are ready, Mrs. Chun said, her tone brisk but not unkind. Second floor, east wing. The child will need rest. Thank you, Mara managed. She followed Mrs. Chun up a curved staircase, through hallways lined with art that probably cost more than her car. The bedroom suite was larger than her entire apartment. 2 rooms connected by a doorway. One with a king bed, the other with a smaller bed already made up with soft blankets. Someone had left a stuffed rabbit on the pillow. Mr. Hwang thought your daughter might like it, Mrs. Chun said, noticing Mara's gaze. There are clothes in the closet, various sizes. Bathroom is through there. If you need anything, use the phone by the bed. Extension 7. Then she was gone, and Mara was alone with Isla in a stranger's house, committed to a protection she didn't fully understand from a man she'd met an hour ago. She laid Isla in the small bed, tucking the blankets around her. Her daughter's breathing was steady now, the flush fading from her cheeks. Mara sat on the edge of the mattress, watching her sleep, trying to process everything that had happened since that first knock on the door. Mommy! Isla's eyes fluttered open. Where are we? Somewhere safe, baby. Go back to sleep. Is Daddy here? The question hit like a fist. No, Daddy's not here. Good. Isla murmured, already drifting off again. I don't like Daddy. Mara's throat tightened. She stroked Isla's hair, remembering the last time Tate had visited. The shouting, the broken lamp, the way Isla had hidden in her room for hours afterward. That had been the final straw, the moment Mara filed the restraining order and changed her number. Not that any of it mattered now. A soft knock on the bedroom door made her jump. Jin stood in the hallway, still in his expensive suit despite the late hour. May I come in? He asked. Mara glanced at Isla, then stepped into the main bedroom, leaving the door cracked. Thank you. For the doctor. For all of this. I don't know how I'll repay you. That's not a concern right now. Jin moved to the window, looking out of the grounds. Security lights dotted the landscape like stars. I need you to understand the situation fully. Tate didn't just steal money. He stole from the Kozlov organization. Russians. They've been in the city for 3 years, trying to establish territory. They're violent, unpredictable, and they view every debt as a matter of honor. Then why are you involved? Because Tate was working for me when he made the arrangement with them. He was supposed to facilitate a transaction, legitimate business, actually, import licenses for a shipping company I own. Instead, he took their advance payment and disappeared, which makes it my problem. Mara sank onto the edge of the bed. So this is about your reputation. Partially, but Ms. Lane, you need to understand something else. I've been watching Tate for weeks, trying to locate him. In that time, I've learned a great deal about his life. About you. About what you've endured. Heat rushed to her face. You investigated me? Yes. Jin turned from the window, his expression unreadable. Single mother. 2 jobs. Nursing school at night until you had to drop out when Isla got sick last year. Restraining order against your ex-husband. Eviction notice posted on your door 6 days ago. Stop. Mara's hands clenched. Just stop. I know what my life looks like. I don't need you cataloging my failures. I wasn't cataloging failures. I was establishing context. Jin's voice softened slightly. You've been surviving impossible circumstances with remarkable resilience. That's not nothing. It's not enough either. The words came out harder than she intended. If it was enough, I wouldn't have sent that text. I wouldn't have needed to beg my ex-husband for money to save our daughter. You do what any parent would do. There's no shame in that. Mara laughed, a bitter sound. You don't have children, do you? No. Then you don't understand. Every decision is shame. Every compromise. Every moment you can't give them what they need. It adds up until you're drowning in it. Silence stretched between them. Jin studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she held his gaze. I had a sister, he said finally, younger than me. Our father owed money to the wrong people. They took her when I was 17, held her for 3 days while my father scrambled to find a ransom. He couldn't. I tried everything, begged, threatened, bargained. Nothing worked. What happened? They killed her anyway. Sent her body back as a message. Jin's expression remained controlled, but something dark moved behind his eyes. That's when I understood that mercy is a luxury in this world. That protection is the only currency that matters. I've spent 20 years building an organization that ensures no one takes from me again. Mara's anger drained away, replaced by something heavier. I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me who I am, but also means I recognize certain patterns. And you're trying to protect your daughter from the consequences. I respect that, which is why I'm offering you more than temporary shelter. What do you mean? I want you to consider staying here permanently. Not as a guest. As part of my household. I need someone to manage the domestic operations. Mrs. Chun is excellent, but she's ready to retire. The position comes with salary, benefits, and security. For both of you. Mara stared at him. You're offering me a job? Yes. I don't know anything about managing an estate like this. You manage 2 jobs, nursing school, and single parenthood simultaneously. I think you'll adapt. Jin moved toward the door. You don't have to decide tonight. Rest. In the morning, I'll show you what the position entails. If you're not interested, we'll find another solution. He was leaving, and Mara knew she should let him go. Should process this conversation alone, figure out what she actually wanted. But the question came out anyway. Why me? Jin paused at the doorway. Because you sent a text message to a stranger at 3 in the morning, begging for help to save your daughter. And when that stranger turned out to be a criminal, you didn't waste time judging. You asked what protection meant. That kind of pragmatism is rare. Valuable. He glanced back at her. Also, Isla likes rabbits. She mentioned it to the doctor while being examined. I thought she should have one. Then he was gone, and Mara was alone with her thoughts and her sleeping daughter and a stuffed rabbit that shouldn't have mattered but somehow did. She didn't sleep. Instead, she lay in the dark, listening to Isla's breathing and trying to understand how her life had fractured so completely in the span of a few hours. Every choice she'd made for 6 years had been about safety, about building walls between her daughter and the chaos Tate represented. And now those walls were gone, replaced by a different kind of danger wrapped in expensive suits and private security. But Isla was breathing easily. Her fever was gone. And for the first time in months, Mara wasn't trying to calculate how many days until the next paycheck or whether she could skip another meal to stretch the grocery budget. Maybe that was worth something. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through curtains that probably cost more than Mara's monthly rent. She heard movement in the house, footsteps in distant hallways, the low murmur of voices. Isla stirred, stretching, her eyes blinking open. Mommy? I'm hungry. Okay, baby. Let's find some breakfast. They ventured downstairs, Mara acutely aware of how out of place they looked. Isla wore the same wrinkled pajamas from last night. Mara's clothes hadn't been changed in 24 hours. But Mrs. Chen appeared in the foyer as if summoned, her expression warm. Good morning. Breakfast is in the kitchen. Come. The kitchen was enormous, all stainless steel and marble counters. A young man in chef's whites was plating eggs and fruit. He smiled at Isla. What would you like? Pancakes? Waffles? Isla looked at Mara, uncertain. Can I have pancakes? Of course you can. They ate at a small table by the window, looking out at gardens that seemed to stretch forever. Isla chattered about the rabbit, about the big house, about whether there were any other kids here. Mara answered mechanically, her mind elsewhere. Jin appeared halfway through the meal, dressed more casually than last night. Jeans and a black shirt that somehow still looked expensive. He poured himself coffee from a pot on the counter and sat down across from them. "How's the fever?" he asked Isla. She looked up from her pancakes, syrup on her chin. "All better. The doctor was nice." "Good. What about school? Were you in school before this?" Isla nodded. "First grade. I like reading. Reading is important." Jean glanced at Mara. "There's a private school 15 minutes from here. Excellent academics, small class sizes. I have connections with the administration." "We can't afford private school," Mara said quietly. "It will be part of the arrangement. If you take the position." Isla looked between them, confused. "What position?" "Mr. Hwang offered Mommy a job," Mara said. "Managing this house." "Would we live here?" Isla's eyes widened. "With the rabbit? Possibly. I like it here. It's pretty and quiet." Isla returned to her pancakes, the matter apparently settled in her 6-year-old mind. Jean stood. "Ms. Lane, when you're finished, I'd like to show you something." Mrs. Chun can watch Isla. 20 minutes later, Mara followed Jean through the house. He showed her the security systems, the staff schedules, the supply chains that kept the household running. It was overwhelming, multiple buildings on the property, each with specific functions. Guest houses, a gym, an office complex where legitimate business operations ran. "This is the control center," Jean said, opening a door to reveal a room full of monitors. "Security feed, 24-hour surveillance of the grounds. The team rotates in 8-hour shifts." Mara stared at the screens, at the armed men patrolling the perimeter. "This is a fortress." "Yes. What are you protecting against?" "Everything." Jin's voice was matter-of-fact. "I've made enemies in my line of work. Some legitimate competitors. Some less savory. The only way to maintain power is to ensure no one can threaten what's yours. And you want me to manage all of this?" "Not the security. That's handled by my head of operations. But the domestic side, staff coordination, supply management, household finances. Mrs. Chun does it now. She'd train you." Mara turned away from the monitors. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Go ahead. What happens when this situation with Tate resolves? When he's no longer a threat? Do we really get to stay? Or is this temporary protection that ends the moment you don't need us anymore?" Jean was quiet for a long moment. "That depends partly on what you want. But Ms. Lane, I should tell you that Tate isn't the only threat. The Kozlovs won't stop looking for him. And even if we resolve that debt, there are others. Men who lost money because of his theft. They'll want compensation. They'll look for leverage. You and Isla will remain targets as long as Tate is alive." The floor seemed to tilt. "So we're never safe. Is that what you're saying?" "I'm saying that safety is relative. Here, behind these walls, with my resources protecting you. Yes, you're safe. Out there, in your old life, with no protection and no resources, you'll spend every day looking over your shoulder." Mara's hands clenched. "Then what's the solution? I can't live in a fortress forever. Isla can't grow up like this. There is one solution." Jin's voice was careful. "Tate needs to disappear. Permanently." "You mean kill him?" "I mean remove him from the equation in a way that satisfies the debts and eliminates future threats." Mara's stomach turned. "I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm telling you it's an option. One that ensures your daughter's safety beyond any temporary arrangement. And if I say no, then we find another way. But Ms. Lane, you need to understand that every alternative has risks. Exile, witness protection. They all rely on Tate staying gone, staying quiet. And weak men rarely do either." Mara moved to the window, looking out at the grounds, at the security measures and the controlled environment and the life that could exist here if she was willing to accept what it cost. "I need time," she said. "You have it, but not unlimited time. My people are closing in on Tate's location. When we find him, decisions will need to be made quickly." They walked back toward the main house in silence. Isla was in the living room with Mrs. Chun, drawing pictures with expensive markers on expensive paper. She looked up when they entered, her smile bright. "Mommy, look, I drew the rabbit." Mara examined the picture, a lumpy, cheerful rabbit with oversized ears. "It's beautiful, baby. Mrs. Chun says there's a library upstairs with lots of books. Can we go see?" "Sure, in a little bit." Jin excused himself, disappearing into another wing of the house. Mrs. Chun gathered her things, preparing to leave for the day, and Mara sat on the expensive couch, watching her daughter draw, trying to figure out how to make impossible choices. 3 days passed in a strange rhythm. Isla adjusted quickly, the way children do. She explored the house, played in the gardens, and asked 1,000 questions about everything she saw. Jin appeared periodically, always polite, always respectful of Mara's space. But she felt the weight of his presence even when he wasn't there. The unspoken deadline, the decision waiting. On the 4th morning, Jin knocked on her bedroom door before breakfast. His expression was grim. "We found him." Mara's heart stopped. "Where?" "Motel outside the city. My men have him contained. I need you to see something before we proceed." She followed him to the control center. On one of the monitors, she saw a video feed, a motel room, dated 3 hours earlier. Tate was there, pacing, talking on a phone. Jin turned up the volume. "Telling you, I can deliver. The kid, 6 years old. His kid. She's leverage, worth way more than the cash he's asking for." Tate's voice was manic, desperate. "Just give me 2 days. I know where she is. I can grab her easy." Mara's knees buckled. Jin caught her arm, steadying her. "Keep watching," he said quietly. On the screen, Tate continued. "The ex-wife's got her in some shitty apartment. No security. I've been there before. I just need the upfront money to hire someone to help me move her. Then we negotiate with Hwang. Trade the kid for the debt. Clean. Simple." The video cut off. Mara couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The man she'd married. The father of her child. Talking about kidnapping Isla like she was property to be traded. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," Jin said. "But you needed to understand what we're dealing with. He was going to take her." Mara's voice was hollow. "He was going to use her as a bargaining chip." "Yes. And if you hadn't found me first." "Don't think about that. Focus on now. On what needs to happen next." Mara turned to Jin, and something cold settled in her chest. Something that felt like clarity. "You said there were options. Tell me all of them." Jin studied her. Option 1, elimination. Tate disappears. The Kozlovs get confirmation he's dead, which satisfies the debt from their perspective. You and Isla are free of him permanently. Option 2, exile with new identity. We fake his death, relocate him somewhere far away. He signs away all parental rights. But there's always a chance he surfaces again. Always a risk. And option 3, we turn him over to the Kozlovs. Let them handle it their way. You don't have to be involved in the decision. But their methods are less clean. More painful. Mara looked back at the screen, at the frozen image of Tate's face. She thought about Isla's question, "Is Daddy here?" And her relief when the answer was no. He was going to hurt her, Mara said. Not physically, maybe, but he was going to traumatize her. Scare her. Use her. That's worse than hitting her. That's taking away everything that makes her feel safe. Yes. If I choose option 1, elimination, I'm asking you to kill someone. For me. For Isla. I'll have to live with that choice. You will, Jin agreed. But you'll live. Your daughter will live. Without fear. Isn't that worth something? Mara closed her eyes. Thought about Isla's smile this morning at breakfast. The way she'd laughed while drawing pictures. The lightness that had been missing for so long from her daughter's voice. Option 2, she said. Exile. New identity. He signs away his rights to Isla. Completely. Legally. And if he ever tries to contact us, if he ever comes back, then option 1 becomes automatic. No negotiations. No second chances. Jin nodded slowly. That's fair. Merciful even. More than he deserves. I know. But I need to be able to look my daughter in the eye someday when she asks about her father. I need to be able to say I gave him a chance to walk away. That I didn't choose violence as the first option. Even though violence was his first choice for you. Especially because of that. I won't become what he is. Something shifted in Jin's expression. Respect, maybe. Or understanding. All right, I'll make the arrangements. He'll be gone by tomorrow. You'll never see him again. Mara felt tears on her cheeks. She wiped them away roughly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You still have to decide what comes next. For you and Isla, I already decided. The job. The position you offered. I'll take it. You're sure? No, but I'm sure that whatever life we build here will be better than what we had. And I'm sure that Isla deserves better than to spend her childhood looking over her shoulder. Mara met Jin's gaze. I'm also sure that you wouldn't have offered if you didn't believe I could do it. So yes, I'm sure enough. Jin smiled, a small, genuine expression that transformed his face. Then welcome to the household, Ms. Lane. Mrs. Chun will be delighted to start your training. The next weeks blurred together. Mara threw herself into learning the systems that kept Jin's household running. It was overwhelming at first. The staff schedules, the security protocols, the vendors and suppliers. But gradually patterns emerged. She discovered she had a talent for organization, for anticipating needs before they arose. Mrs. Chun proved to be an excellent teacher, patient and thorough. Isla started at the new school. She came home every afternoon chattering about her teachers, her classmates, the library that was bigger than their old apartment. She never asked about Tate. Mara had told her the truth, that Daddy was going away and wouldn't be part of their lives anymore. Isla had simply nodded and asked if she could have more pancakes. Jin was often absent, managing businesses Mara didn't ask about. But when he was home, he made time to check on Isla. He'd sit with her during breakfast, asking about her reading. He brought her books from the library in the city. Small gestures that added up to something Mara couldn't quite name. 2 months after they'd arrived, Jin found Mara in the garden. She was reviewing expense reports on a tablet, trying to identify cost savings in the household budget. You're working too hard, he said, sitting beside her on the bench. I'm trying to prove I'm worth what you're paying me. You proved that weeks ago. Mrs. Chin called me last night. She said you've streamlined the supply chain, reduced costs by 15%, and somehow convinced the security team to actually follow proper break procedures. Mara felt heat rise to her face. They were burning out. I just adjusted the rotation schedule. You saw a problem and fixed it. That's leadership. Jin paused. I wanted to tell you that the legal paperwork is finalized. Tate Reynolds signed away all parental rights to Isla. The judge approved it this morning. He has no legal claim to her. Ever. Relief flooded through Mara so powerfully she had to set down the tablet. It's really over? It's really over. She realized she was crying. Jin pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her, saying nothing. They sat in silence while she processed the weight lifting from her shoulders. I need to tell you something, Jin said finally. The night I received your text message, I almost ignored it. I get dozens of misdirected messages. Usually I delete them, but something made me look at the contact information, made me trace the number. And when I saw the emergency room bills, the eviction notice, the restraining order, I saw my sister, my mother, all the people I couldn't save. Mara looked at him. So, this was never about me. It started that way. A chance to correct an old failure. But Ms. Lane, Mara, it became about you very quickly. About the way you advocated for your daughter, even while terrified. About how you adapted to circumstances that would have broken most people. About your integrity, even when offered easier paths. What are you saying? Jin turned to face her fully. I'm saying that over the past 2 months, I've watched you transform this household. You've earned Mrs. Chin's respect, which is no small feat. You've made Isla happier than I've ever seen her. And you've made me reconsider assumptions I've held for years about trust and partnership. Mara's heart was pounding. Jin, I'm not asking for anything. I need you to know that. Your position here is secure regardless of how you respond to what I'm about to say. But I need to be honest with you. He paused. I've developed feelings for you. Deep feelings. And I would like to explore the possibility of something beyond our current arrangement. The world seemed to pause. Mara thought about the man who'd appeared at her door in the middle of the night, who'd protected her daughter without question, who'd given her choices, even difficult ones, who'd seen her not as a victim to be rescued, but as a person capable of her own decisions. I have feelings for you too, she said quietly. And that terrifies me, because the power imbalance is real. You own this house. You employ me. You control the security that keeps us safe. How do I know what I feel is real versus gratitude, or fear of losing everything? You don't, Jin said simply. Neither do I, which is why I'm not asking for an answer now. I'm asking permission to court you properly, slowly, with transparency about the complications. If at any point you want to stop, we stop. No consequences, no change to your position. And if it doesn't work out, then we remain what we are now, employer and employee. Friends, I hope, but nothing more. Mara studied his face, saw the vulnerability there, the risk he was taking, and realized that in his own way, he was as scared as she was. Okay, she said. We could try. Slowly, Jin smiled. Slowly, they stood, and Mara reached for his hand, squeezed it once before letting go. Then she picked up her tablet and headed back toward the house, Jin walking beside her. Isla was waiting in the kitchen, helping the chef make cookies. Her apron was covered in flour, her hair escaping its ponytail. She looked up when they entered, grinning. Mommy, Mr. Jin, we made chocolate chip. Save some for me, Jin said, ruffling her hair. Mara watched them together, and something tight in her chest began to ease. This wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't the fairy tale ending she'd dreamed of as a young woman. But it was real. It was safe. And maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something good. The months that followed weren't perfect. There were difficult conversations about boundaries, about the nature of their relationship, about how to navigate the complexities of Mara's position. But they were honest conversations, patient ones. Jin proved willing to examine his own assumptions about power and control. Mara learned to voice her needs without fear of repercussion. Isla thrived. She made friends at school. Her reading level jumped 2 grades. She started calling Jin by his first name instead of Mr. Jin, a shift that seemed to mean something to both of them. On Isla's 7th birthday, 6 months after that first desperate text message, they threw a party in the garden. Isla's classmates ran through the grounds, supervised by security who looked uncomfortable but determined to make the day special. There was cake and games and presents, more than Isla had ever had in her life. That evening, after the guests had left and Isla was asleep clutching her new books, Mara found Jin on the terrace. He was looking out at the grounds, his expression thoughtful. Thank you, she said, joining him, for all of it, today and everything else. You don't have to thank me. I want to. Mara took a breath. I also want to tell you that I've been thinking about what you asked me 6 months ago, about exploring something more. Jin turned to her. And I think I'm ready. If you still want to. I do. His voice was steady. But Mara, I need you to be certain. Because if we do this, if we become something more than we are now, I'm all in. Completely. That includes Isla. That includes building something permanent. Marriage. The word felt strange in her mouth. Eventually, if that's what you want. But first, dating. Real dating. Movies and dinners and figuring out if we actually like each other outside of this controlled environment. Mara laughed. We live in the same house. I'm not sure how much more controlled it can get. Then we'll figure it out together. Slowly. Remember? Slowly, Mara agreed. Jin kissed her then, soft and careful. Like she was something precious. Something worth protecting. And for the first time since she'd opened her apartment door to find a stranger offering salvation, Mara felt like she could breathe fully. The text message that had changed her life sat in her phone's history, a reminder of the night everything shifted. Sometimes she looked at it, remembering her desperation, but mostly she looked forward at the life they were building together. A year passed, then another. Mara became indispensable to Jin's operations. Not just managing the household, but providing insights into his legitimate businesses. She had a mind for logistics, for seeing patterns others missed. Jin began bringing her into meetings, valuing her perspective. Isla grew taller, more confident. She excelled in school, made lasting friendships, and seemed to have forgotten the fear that had once shadowed her childhood. On the rare occasions she mentioned Tate, it was with the distant curiosity of someone discussing a character from story rather than a parent who'd abandoned her. The relationship between Mara and Jin deepened gradually, built on foundations of mutual respect and hard-won trust. They learn each other's rhythms. Jin's need for order and control, Mara's fierce independence and occasional stubbornness. They argued sometimes about decisions or approaches, but they always talked through it, neither willing to let resentment build. 2 years after that first night, Jin took Mara to dinner at an exclusive restaurant in the city. She wore a dress he'd bought her, something elegant that made her feel like a different person from the exhausted woman who'd opened her apartment door in the middle of the night. Over dessert, he reached across the table and took her hand. "I have something to ask you," he said. "And before I do, I need you to know that whatever answer you give, nothing changes between us unless you want it to." Mara's pulse quickened. "Okay, these past 2 years have been the best of my life. You've challenged me, supported me, and shown me what partnership actually means. You've taken a house and made it a home. You've taken a lonely man and given him a family." Jin paused, his grip on her hand tightening. "Mara Lane, will you marry me?" The restaurant seemed to fade away. Mara looked at the man across from her, remembering all the moments that had brought them here. The fear and the risk. The slow building of something real. The way he'd never tried to own her, only to stand beside her. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." Jin pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring that caught the candlelight. Simple, elegant, perfect. He slid it on her finger, and Mara realized she was laughing and crying at the same time. "Should we tell Isla?" she asked. "I already did. Yesterday. I wanted her blessing first. And she asked if she could call me Dad." Jin's voice cracked slightly. "I said yes." Mara pressed her hand to her mouth, overcome. All the broken pieces of her old life, somehow reassembled into something beautiful, something whole. They married 3 months later in the garden where Mara had spent so many hours learning to trust again. It was a small ceremony, just close friends, key staff members, and Isla, who served as ring bearer with solemn pride. Mrs. Chen cried throughout the entire ceremony, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. When Jin kissed his bride, Isla cheered loudly enough to make everyone laugh. And Mara thought about the text message that had started everything. The desperate plea sent to a wrong number in the darkest moment of her life. Sometimes salvation came from unexpected places. Sometimes the wrong number was exactly right. The reception lasted into the evening, music drifting across the grounds. Mara danced with Jin, with Isla, with the security guards who'd become like family. She looked around at the faces gathered to celebrate with them and felt gratitude, so profound it was almost painful. Later, after Isla had been tucked into bed still wearing her flower girl dress because she refused to take it off, Mara and Jin stood on the terrace watching the stars. "Happy?" Jin asked. "Terrified," Mara admitted. "But yes, happy. What are you afraid of?" "That I'll wake up and this will be gone. That somehow I'll lose it all again." She leaned against him. "I know that's irrational, but I can't help it. It's not irrational. You've lost too much in your life. The fear is earned." Jin wrapped his arms around her. "But Mara, I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you and Isla are protected. Safe. Loved. That's not something that disappears. People leave. Things change. Some things do. Some people do. But not me. Not us." He turned her to face him. "I told you once that I've spent 20 years building an organization that ensures no one takes from me again. That was true, but incomplete. What I've really been building is the capacity to protect what matters. And you matter. Islam matters. This family matters more than anything else." Mara kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into the gesture. Gratitude and love and hope and fear all tangled together. When they finally went inside, she stopped in Isla's room to check on her daughter one more time. The little girl was sprawled across her bed, flower crown askew. The stuffed rabbit Jin had given her that first night tucked under her arm. She looked peaceful, safe, loved. Mara adjusted the blankets and kissed her forehead. "Sweet dreams, baby." "Love you, Mommy," Islam murmured without waking. "Love you, Dad." The word hit Mara square in the chest. Dad, not Jin. Not Mr. Jean. Dad. She found Jean in their bedroom, loosening his tie. When she told him what Isla had said, his composure cracked. He sat on the edge of the bed, and Mara saw the emotion he usually kept so carefully controlled break through. I never thought I'd have this, he said quietly. A family. A daughter who calls me dad. A wife who sees past what I am to who I want to be. You're a good man, Jin Hwang. You just hide it behind expensive suits and security measures. I'm a man who's done terrible things, who continues to do them. That doesn't change just because I put a ring on your finger. I know what you are, what your business involves. I went into this with open eyes. Mara sat beside him. But I also know what you've done for us. How you've protected Isla. How you've given us a life we never could have built alone. That matters too. Does it balance out? I don't know. Maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the question is whether you're trying to be better. Whether you're building something good alongside the darkness. And I think you are. Jean pulled her close, and they sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the security lights swept the grounds in their endless rotation. Inside, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances tried to figure out how to build a future from a foundation of desperation and choice. The years continued to unfold. Isla grew into a bright, confident teenager with her mother's determination and her father's strategic mind. She knew what Jean did, the business he ran. They'd told her the truth when she was old enough to understand, believing that honesty was better than secrets. She'd struggled with it initially, asking hard questions about morality and choice. But ultimately, she'd accepted that people were complicated. That love didn't require perfection. Mara's role in Jin's organization expanded. She became his chief of operations, managing not just the household, but entire divisions of his legitimate enterprises. She had a talent for business, it turned out, for reading people and situations, for finding solutions others missed. But she also insisted on boundaries, on keeping certain parts of their life separate from Jin's darker dealings. She ran the legal businesses. She managed the household. She raised their daughter. And she let Jin handle the rest, trusting him to keep that world away from their family. It wasn't perfect. There were close calls, threats from rivals, investigations from law enforcement, moments when the darkness crept too close. But Jin's security held. His organization remained strong, and their family stayed protected behind walls that never came down. On Isla's 18th birthday, they threw a party in the same garden where they'd married 10 years earlier. Watching her daughter laugh with friends, Mara felt the full weight of everything that had changed since that desperate night when she'd sent a text to a wrong number. Jean found her standing apart from the celebration, lost in thought. Remembering? He asked. Always. How could I not? Do you regret it? Any of it? Mara considered the question seriously. The life they'd built was unconventional, complicated, built on a foundation that most people would never understand or approve of. But it was theirs. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. I wish I'd never been desperate enough to need saving. I wish Tate had been a different man. I wish a lot of things about how we started. But I don't regret where we ended up. Neither do I. Jean wrapped his arm around her waist. You saved me too, you know. I just didn't realize I needed saving. They stood together watching their daughter celebrate coming of age, surrounded by people who loved her. Protected, safe, free to build whatever life she chose. Later that night, after the guests had left and Isla had gone to bed, Mara pulled out her old phone. She'd kept it all these years, even after upgrading to newer models. Kept it because it held that original text message, the one that had changed everything. She read it now, the desperate words from a terrified mother. Please. Emergency. Isla has a fever. 104 degrees. Need $300 for ER. I'm begging you. She's only 6. Please. Below it, Jin's response. Open the door. Doctor is outside. For words that had altered the trajectory of 2 lives. 3 lives, counting Isla. Mara saved the message again, then put the phone away. Some things were worth remembering, worth honoring, even when they came from the darkest moments. Jean appeared in the doorway, coming to bed. In a minute, but she stood for a while longer, looking out at the grounds, at the life they'd built, at the impossible gift that had come from a desperate mistake in the middle of the night. Sometimes wrong numbers led to the right place. Sometimes salvation wore an expensive suit and offered protection that came with complications. Sometimes the fairy tale was messier and stranger and more real than any storybook version. But it was still a fairy tale, still a happy ending, even if it looked different than expected. Mara turned off the light and went to join her husband. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complications, new moments of fear and joy, and everything in between. But tonight, she was simply a woman who'd fought for her daughter and found a partner who'd fought beside her. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. If you've made it this far in our story, thank you for joining Mara and Jin on their journey from that desperate midnight text to the family they built together. What did you think about their unconventional love story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this tale of protection, choice, and unexpected salvation, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more compelling stories that explore the complicated nature of love, family, and the choices we make in impossible circumstances. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. Until next time, remember that sometimes the wrong number is exactly right.